evening and welcome to Your Right to Know by the Fitchburg Republican City Committee. My name is Mary Lotze and I will be your co-host for this evening's show. And by the way, Happy New Year to everybody. 2026 is here. One of my favorite people to have as a guest is a returning guest, and that's Dennis Galvin. And Dennis is an old friend to Your Right to Know and to the Fitchburg Republicans. Dennis, welcome and Happy New Year.
Well, I'm coming because you're a great friend of mine as well. It's a mutual admiration society.
Dennis, why don't you tell our viewers, just remind them again who you are, and as we go into the topics, tell them a little bit about what we're going to talk about, which is going to be, what did the election of Zohran Mamdani mean as the mayor of New York mean to the United States of America? Yeah. What does that mean for our country, that big city, and our country?
Sure,
so please introduce yourself.
So my name is Dennis Galvin. I'm a resident of Westford, Massachusetts. A little bit about my background. I had a long career in law enforcement. Began as a student at Northeastern University. I got my bachelor's degree there, my master's degree there in criminal justice. I went on and I did a 30-year career with the Massachusetts State Police. I served in a whole variety of services, and I ended at the rank of major, director of the training program down at New Braintree, and helped actually prepare the first state police training program with regards to terrorism in the post-9/11 period.
Wow.
Then after that, I did some time in the security business. I was the director of security for the Executive Office of Transportation, which covered all the security for the Logan Airport, the Turnpike, the MBTA, and all those places. And then I finished my professional career as the director of security director of the security force at the Seabrook Nuclear Power Plant, which was nuclear security. Since that time, I've been involved, active in politics. I was elected to the planning board in Westford, served 12 years, 2 as the chair. Had the proud experience of serving 8 years on the Republican State Committee, which was an experience. And then I currently serve on the Republican Town Committee in Westford, and I'm the secretary.
Well, it's wonderful to see you again.
Oh, absolutely.
And what I want to explore tonight is definitions, some definitions. You know, we're kind of ground zero for a lot of, I'll call it antics, that's happening outside our city hall. We have a lot of standouts and rallies and protests about many different things that have been going on in Fitchburg. And people tend to throw around terms. And I don't think these terms are either known to those people or known to our viewing audience. So I want to sort of set a little bit of a dictionary down here to some terms. So let's start with democracy. What is democracy?
Okay, well, the terms are relative to who's using them. Mm-hmm. Okay, so.
But they shouldn't be, should they?
Well, I guess it is what it is, right?
But a term is a term.
Yeah, to people like you and I, democracy means full participation of everybody in the community, and you know, you make your best argument, and you rise or fall on the merits of your argument. If you lose, that's okay. You go back and you try again later on, or you admit that you were wrong and move ahead. Right? If you're a socialist, or even if you're a communist, democracy means the Communist Party is running the state or running the government, and everybody else is excluded. You hear the word progress, right? Progressive, all right. Well, in a non-socialist, non-communist world, progressive means you're moving towards improvement, okay? In the communist vernacular or the socialist vernacular, progressive means I guess you could say the capitulation or the end or the abolition of capitalism. How further along you are in that process is how much progress you're making. Mm-hmm. So you have to have a mindset to understand what those words mean, and you have to be very, very astute to it.
What about fascism? Everybody that people don't agree with, we're all fascist.
Yeah.
I don't agree with something that you just said, you're a fascist.
Okay, so fascism is a coined communist phrase that was originated by Joseph Stalin himself, and it applies to anybody that has a difference of opinion or opposes the communist plan, which is total domination, control of all the means of production, and a dictatorship for the state that you're in. So if you oppose anybody that's a hardcore communist or a hardcore socialist, then what happens is you're going to be called a fascist. It has no basis in fact. It's just that's their term for you. Now, fascism has an independent view. It has an independent definition. And fascism means basically the bonding of political values to the exclusion of all others. So if you're a person who holds certain beliefs, certain chauvinistic beliefs, and you don't think anybody else is worth it, and you collect other people like you, and you're willing to basically use force to impress your ideas, you're a fascist. So, for example, Benito Mussolini's Italian fascist movement were like that. The Nazis had fascist elements, but they went beyond fascism into a whole different ideology than just fascism. But anybody that gets a gang together and decides we're going to push through and you're going to buy this, and if you don't like it, we're cracking your head, that's a fascist.
What about Antifa or Antifa?
Well, Antifa,
a lot of people.
Yeah, Antifa is its history goes back to the 1930s, and it goes back to the street battles that happened between the communists and the Nazis in Germany in the period of 1930 to 1940 until the Nazis ascended and defeated them. Antifa was the street battalions or the street force for the communist movement in Germany at the time, and they eventually were defeated by the Nazi stormtroopers and eventually the SS. But both of them shared one thing, both the Nazis and the communists. They opposed democracy, real democracy. They did not want a democratic process running the state. They didn't want open government. They wanted dictatorship, both sides.
Just as a point of clarification, when we talk about America, a lot of people say we are a democracy. Well, we are a democracy, but we're also a republic.
Yeah.
Could you just explain to our viewers the sort of the difference between that term of republic and democracy?
We are a constitutional democratic republic that is designed around a federal principle, all right? So we have 50 separate independent states that conduct themselves in accordance with their own state constitutions, and then there's a federal constitution and a federal government that kind of overrides or at least supersedes. It does not interfere, but it maintains that all the states preserve certain fundamental rights within those states. Now, to your point, the problem, or specifically, can you just clarify what you were asking?
Well, the republic.
Okay, so the republic. So in other words, the founders. And I think there was a great series back in December on the Revolution. If you watch this, it was a Ken Burns special on PBS. If you watch that, the founders were very nervous about pure democracy. The only place you find real pure democracy is probably open town meeting in one of the towns where people all come together and they vote. What they were concerned about with democracy was that a pure democracy, can evolve into a fascist movement. In other words, Rousseau, for example, the great philosopher, basically said that the opinion of the majority was supreme, and nobody had the right to object to it. Robespierre, the famous revolutionary, said there's only two parties in France. There's the people and their enemies, okay? So a democracy could declare you an enemy. All right? You would have no rights to have a due process.
Which is fascism.
Right? Which is fascism, and they could confiscate your property without any due process at all, and they could even kill you if they wanted to, and that happened in the French Revolution. And the French Revolution basically gave democracy kind of a bad name because it got completely out of control. So the United States was very concerned about that. They incorporate democratic principles in the way that business is conducted. So, for example, you elect representatives to Congress or to the State House. You have to elect them. Everybody can vote for those people. There's no exemptions. When they get into the government, they can debate and argue, but the decisions are made by a democratic process where the majority wins. Some cases it's a 2/3 majority in rare cases, right? Particularly if it has to do with the Constitution. But that's how democracy has been incorporated into the Republican process or the Republican form of government in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Let's switch now gears and go on to Zohran Mamdani.
Okay.
Where did this guy even come from?
I think he has original roots in either India or Africa. I think that's where he originally comes from. I know that, I don't know his history as how long he's been here in the United States, but he obviously...
He almost rose from the ashes. He came from nowhere, and all of a sudden...
He came under the wing of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes.
And that wing of the party.
Which is, I will describe as the progressive wing of the Democratic.
Yeah, I think you could even call them the socialist wing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, the difference between a socialist and a communist is a very simple thing. The socialist generally is more squeamish about blood than a communist is, okay? And that's not an understatement. Communism is a terror-based movement that tries to intimidate and use force to seize property, to impose its will on the public without any form of democratic recourse. Socialists, democratic socialists, engage in the democratic process. Their aims are the same, which is the total collectivization of all the means of production, but they're willing to go through the democratic process to do it. That's the big difference between the two. Aims are the same, but the processes are different.
If I'm not mistaken, Mamdani calls himself a communist.
Well, he certainly was called a communist after he said that he would forcibly seize property in New York City. That is a communist policy.
Right.
Right? And, the setting up of
getting rid of the police.
Yeah, he was going to get rid of the police. So who's he going to replace them with?
Social workers is what he said.
Well, I have a feeling the history of communism tells me that they'll have their own police force. Mm-hmm. And it won't be one that's going to be guided or controlled or have oversight over it based upon constitutional principles.
Right.
That's not what they believe in. Mm-hmm. They're a police state. The best, most active communist police organization now is Communist China.
How did we get here? 24 years ago, New York City was bombed. Shanksville, Pennsylvania, the Pentagon. And back in the 50s, if you referred to yourself as a communist, or if anybody even thought you were a communist, you were going to go before Senate select hearings because you were suspect of being an infidel or certainly a traitor to the country. How did we in 75 years and just 24 years after 9/11, did we elect as the largest city in our country, capitalist capital of America, how did we elect a Zohran Mamdani? How did that happen?
Well, that's an interesting story. I think it's a long story. I think you made reference to the 50s, but I mean, the presence of communism in the United States goes back about 100 years. It started right after the revolution, became very active in the United States. It targeted certain groups, working people, workers, African Americans in the South, and it basically began its agitation way back when. It was suppressed frequently, but I think the 1950s, following World War II, I think the presence of the nuclear age had something to do with it. I think people became, there was a Soviet Union that had the nuclear bomb, and we had the nuclear bomb, and I think there was an attempt by certain liberal groups, I think, to try to ameliorate the tensions between the two so that they wouldn't lead into a nuclear holocaust. And so a lot of the elites in the United States, the Rockefeller Center, the Rockefeller Foundation, these really what you call ultimate capitalist organizations, began to downplay the difference between the two. The big boost that they got, in my opinion, happened in 1968 with at the peak of the Vietnam War, when they tried to the peace wing of the party tried to take over the Democratic Party in Chicago, and it broke out into a major brawl. I'm sure you remember that,
yes,
right?
Yes.
After that, most of the young elites who were coming out of our universities, Hillary Clinton being one of them, right?
Robert Kennedy was assassinated in many ways because of it.
They took a distinctive left view, and they've maintained that left view for the last 40, 50 years. I think there was a break when Ronald Reagan came in. It was sort of a resurgence, but right after Reagan's term ended, they doubled down, and at this time, many of them they're talented people. They'd amassed some money and some influence, and now they were working to establish that sort of a socialist viewpoint, to blend the idea of American society and Soviet society so that we would have world peace.
It seems like right now, and I hear this from some of my Democrat family and people that I know.
Yes, we all have them.
Is that, I'm a break off of that.
Me too.
Is that they really feel that the Democrat Party has moved so far left.
It has.
Under the and the election of Mamdani really is sort of almost like the pinnacle of where they are, that they don't recognize their own party anymore, and that it will never come back. I mean, we see, even if we think of Barack Obama, who was a progressive when he was in office 8 years ago, even he would say things like the borders should be secure, and he had different proclamations that everybody went, yeah, you're right, yeah. And now he wouldn't fit. If he were to stand on stage and say what he said 8 years ago, he wouldn't fit in his own party anymore. Yeah. And we can see that with a lot of the politicians. Yeah. They've either had to go left. How do you see the Democrat Party surviving, the old Democrat Party surviving, or will it just die? And this is now the Democrat Party is now becoming a very radicalized socialist party.
Well, I think both parties are changing significantly, and I think what you see is the breakup of the old let's keep everything quiet coalition, both Democrat and Republican. That's broken up now. Now it's back into basically ideological principles. To your point about the new ascendancy of the left in the Democratic Party, the fundamental earmarks or benchmarks that you use to decide whether the party is within the United States is, first of all, do they buy the capitalist system? Do they see that capitalist system, or do they want to end it? In the past, liberals have always agreed with it, but wanted to temper it in certain ways. Second thing is, what do they view? How do they view the idea of the Constitution? In other words, do they believe in the elements of the Constitution? And we've all seen a situation in the last few years where if somebody got up in a local meeting and expressed an opinion that wasn't the mainstream, they were getting booed down, trying to get intimidated. Then the last difference, and the real significant difference that marks a communist, is their willingness to engage in serious terror to get what they want. Now, I'll tell you what scares me. This last government close down back in December, right?
Yep.
You saw people in the left, willing to deny needy people food stamps in order to be able to make a point with regards to Obamacare. Now, the object, in the past, there'd be an agreement. Let's fund everything, get everybody taken care of, and we can debate this the next time. They were ruthless in the way they approached it.
It was our own state U.S. Representative Catherine Clark who said, how did she say it? Basically, she said this is a bargaining chip for us.
That's
people
ruthlessness.
Can starve. It's a bargaining chip.
That's ruthlessness that goes beyond any previous. Well, probably not. You go back to the Civil War when we were ready to split at that point. That's the last time you see that kind of ruthlessness. There's a complete disregard for people. And not the funny part, but the sad part of socialism is it tracks with famine. Okay? The first one was the Great Holodomor done under Stalin, where he starved millions of kulaks in Ukraine, of all places, because of the fact that they wouldn't follow his programs. Then there was the Great the great leap forward by Mao Zedong, they estimated over 60 million people starved to death because he denied they couldn't make food, they couldn't provide the food. And here we have a bunch of real hard left people in our Congress willing to deny families food stamps to make a political point that could be resolved later on down the road. Mm-hmm. That's new. That's very dangerous.
In going back to the new mayor of New York, the elected mayor of New York, he has put out all these proclamations about ending the police, taking people's property if necessary. How do you think the people actually react? He hasn't been elected and he hasn't been sworn in yet. How do you think the people who voted for him will actually start reacting when he tries to enact some of his proclamations? Or do you think now that he's in, he'll work at different levels and back off on some of those promises?
Well, I wrote a little article which I circulated called Either Or Mamdani.
Yeah.
And you just hit the fundamental points about that, and that is he was either a demagogue, who's willing to say and do anything to get elected, which ultimately now calls into question his legitimacy, right? Does he really mean what he says or not? And the second part about it is if he's correct, there are two factions that he is sympathetic to. One is this hardcore socialist movement, but the other one is Hamas. And Hamas is as ruthless. I mean, both of these movements have been born out of the same egg, if you will, right? People don't realize that the Soviet communist model and the communist revolution in Russia really brought modern terrorism into the play. They were the first ones to really use it. There was some terrorism before that, but they began to use it on a regular basis. That was denying people food, killing people, having secret trials.
Goes back
in the
to the blood that you said the difference between a communist is the blood,
the Cheka
ruthlessness.
Under Felix Dzerzhinsky, who took people out in the middle of the night. Mm-hmm. They estimate millions of people were murdered in Russia after the revolution. Ironically, it was many of them were communists. Okay, they wiped out the entire first phase of the communist movement and replaced them. Mm-hmm. One of the most classic examples was Stalin's killing of Trotsky. All right, so they're at the leadership in a communist movement, real communist movement, is sociopathic. You have to understand that. Mm-hmm. Now, to your point about Mamdani, if he tries to toe the line and go to the middle, he's going to get hit from the radicals in New York City, and they can cause trouble. They can cause serious damage. If he stays true to their situation, he's going to have to. A communist will never abandon a police force. It will replace a democratic police force with a iron hand SS police force. Yeah. Okay, the Cheka is the model. Okay, and anybody that doesn't understand that better go to their Google and look up CHEKA, Cheka. Okay, and then there's the KGB. Mm-hmm. So that kind of a model requires a police state, because nobody's going to go along with giving up their property voluntarily.
Confiscating my home.
Yeah, confiscating your home, taking your bank book, right? Making you sit in a food line to be able to get with. That's what communism is. Now he's going to have to get through that, and I understand. He made some overtures to Trump. At this point, I'm not sure what happened, but we'll see.
One of the things that it comes back to in my brain is, because you and I have been in politics and been involved in party and promoting different politicians and things. How did he get elected? The Democrat Party put up Andrew Cuomo, failed governor who actually had to resign his position because of outrage and scandal, not just sexual scandals, but during COVID, the nursing home debacle where elder people were cobbled together and they all
10,000 dead, they estimate.
I mean, he had two huge scandals, and yet the best they could do was Mamdani or Cuomo.
Yeah.
What is wrong with that party?
Yeah.
Are they broken?
Well, one of the issues that Bill O'Reilly reported on this, and he talked about the fact that I think there's 2 million voters, 2 million registered voters in New York City, and he says only half of them came out to vote.
So apathy.
Yeah, they didn't bother coming out. And the question is, what are they going to do? I mean, if he tries to confiscate property, I'm sure that a lot of the wealth of New York is just going to pick up and leave. All right. And I remember Cuomo getting up one time and begging the people in New York City not to leave, the wealthy not to leave.
Sure.
Right. But you have to understand the hatred that a true communist has for anybody with wealth. I mean, it's the equivalent of the same hatred that you see from Hamas towards Israel. Mm-hmm. It's on the same par. That's how intense it is.
Mm-hmm. Because they want the property.
They want the property, but they also believe that the people that hold the property are morally inferior, and in some regards, they're almost like how would you call it? They're like people who are demented. They see them as the word is exploiters or people who are
they use others. Is New York City's, is that just a tip of the iceberg? Will this now start happening throughout?
That's a very good question.
Like the domino effect now.
Well, that's a very good question, and I think the first thing people should do is they got to get away from the iPads for a while, and if they're going to stay on them, Google socialism, Google communism, and read about them, and take the time to read it. All right, because you have to know what it means. Okay. And then just consider and from your own experience, how wise is it to give anybody, particularly somebody you don't know, right, all the power over your economy, over your own personal economy? That's the big thing. Your own personal wealth and your own personal opportunities, and who's willing to make you swear oaths to follow their particular program, or you're out. You don't participate. So those are the things that people have to ask. Are things so desperate for them that they're willing to trade whatever freedom they have for this alleged security, which is a fraud? It's not going to happen, but that's what they're using to sell it.
Right,
okay? Because
it seems that people are so afraid. One of the biggest things right now is the economy. People don't feel like it's bouncing back quick enough.
That's right.
But they're looking at socialism, not giving the economy in Trump time, but they're looking at socialism as the new way, and that's scary.
Well, I want to point something out for everybody. I urge you all to read the Communist Manifesto. All
I have
right?
it on my kitchen table right now.
That's right. You have to read this. And on page 14 in the actual manifesto, because if you buy different versions, you're going to get all kinds of introductions to different places. But in the 14th page, this is what Marx's view of handling your situation is, if I could read this very quickly. Finally, in times when the class struggle nears the decisive hour, the process of dissolution going on within the ruling class, in fact, with the whole range of the whole society, assumes such a violent, glaring character that a small section of the ruling class cuts itself adrift and joins the revolutionary class. You hear that? Mm-hmm. This is not a popular revolution. Mm-hmm. The chaos is only the pretext for it. All right? What a communist revolution is basically a small insurgency that co-opts disorder and then imposes a dictatorship.
My final question, two questions. Is Trump going to be the savior of America? And the second one is, who's leading the Democratic Party? The Democrat Party,
Well, if you want my honest opinion, only Jesus Christ is going to save the country.
Yeah.
But that's my personal opinion, okay? But it's going to have to be a power larger than us. Okay, because we have to do some real soul searching. We all have to look at ourselves and weigh the idea of what is our life about? Is it just taking care of ourselves at any cost, with no scruples, and getting the easy way out on everything? If we follow that process, we're going to go into a trap by a group of people who are ruthless and will never let us out of it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dennis, for
My
being
pleasure.
with me tonight, and Happy New Year, everyone.